Next up, we have Dr. Michele Kane presenting on why not level 5.
Hi, everybody. I think one of the things that I missed most during the pandemic was laughing. And I really, really appreciate that. So Nicole, thank you so much for really, raising the energy and just bringing us together in a way that I think in community, when we can laugh together, it just warms my heart and gives me lots of joy. The other thing that I want to piggyback on from what you said is these are the slides that I originally did in 2012. So my slide deck isn't fresh, but I'm going back to review some things. And I just wanted to tell you a little bit about myself, building on what you just said. A lot of times when I introduce myself, one of the things that I say is that I have a lot of letters after my name because I love school. And but the ones that inform my practice the most and the ones that keep me coming back and keep me real are MOM. And so Dan and I, my husband Dan and I, have 6 kids. We have the joys and challenges of a blended family. We have 12 grandkids. And it's just been a journey, and it continues to be a journey. And grandparenting is something that I just didn't realize was ever going to bring the kinds of experiences that we're experiencing together. So one of the things that I learned early on as a little teeny kid is that I love stories. I love books. I love stories, and I'm a storyteller. And being a storyteller kept me out of a doctoral program for a really long time because of the fact that I knew if you were in a doctoral program, you had to do research. And everybody knows what research is. It's a whole lot of numbers that you got to crunch, and it's lots of models, and you've got to learn all this stuff. And I was kind of mediocre in statistics, and I just thought, no. But then I learned about qualitative research. Woohoo! All right, so now I had a name for my storytelling. I had a legitimacy. It was wonderful. And so I got to probably do one of the most fascinating things anybody's done. I got to write my dissertation as a life story of Dr. Anna Marie Roper, which was one of my greatest joys. So that was wonderful. Now, the story that I'm going to tell you today is an interesting one because it started with Dr. Susan Daniels. And you heard Chris say yesterday that Susan and Michael Piechowski co-edited Living with Intensity. So Susan. And Susan and I put together this proposal in 2012 for the Dabrowski Congress. And we wanted to look at some individuals that we had anticipated to be at level 4 because we hadn't seen a lot in the recent literature. Now that was 2012, remember, at level 4. And so we started doing the lit review, and where we started was, we're still, okay, qualitative researchers still do lit reviews. We looked at the work of Brennan Piechowski, which had a developmental framework for self-actualization. And they presented 4 case studies. And one of the things that's been said is that the case study work is really missing in this field. And this is something that all of you can bring, right? You have your own stories, you have the stories of the kids you work with, you have the stories of the people in your family. Let's start collecting the stories. I was thrilled to hear Chris talk about a repository, not just for, just published research, but the stories that we can start to collect. And oral history is really important. Oral history is critical, and as people age, and as Anna Marie used to say, I'm getting closer to the end of my life, honey, than I am the beginning. So if you want to come and get the stories, better come and get them now. As people are aging in our field, it's really important that we collect the stories. So we collected these stories. I have to give you the background before I tell you the update. So these were the themes that they found. So you can take a look. Some of them you're going to see replicated in the levels and in the dynamisms. But it's kind of an interesting one. You see those pro-social values. Solitude is interesting, right? Different than introversion. We know introverts need solitude, but I think solitude's interesting. The self-acceptance we've heard from lots of presenters today, the energy and all that good stuff. So what we presented in 2012 was we had 2 participants. It was interesting. Susan presented the case of someone who is much older, and I presented the case of somebody who is much younger. Now, Susan's person, the person that she did the presentation on, that person's passed over, that person died. And so we're not able to find out any more about what happened to their evolution or what happened in their life. We used some instruments, the DRI. Nancy, who's here, was one of the people who developed that instrument which helped us with levels. And we administered that to our 2 clients. And Nancy and Frank actually scored the DRI for us. And they positioned those folks at, and you know, this is an interesting thing to think about between level 4 and level 5. I want to share right now, just again, another reflection that I'm having about probably one of the, well, Linda's written so many beautiful papers, but one of the beautiful papers that Linda wrote has at its core, I think it was published in Conceptual Foundation's newsletter in 2018. It was about when water becomes steam. And it was about giftedness, okay? And so when you're talking about those high levels, okay, there's a point at which water becomes steam. And I want you to think about that in terms of the levels of development. All right, so if we're thinking about that solid state, a little bit more difficult to move, and then we've got water, fluid, that kind of, you know, motion in it. And as we have all of that disequilibrium and the different kinds of tensions that go, we can see that reflected in the water. But at some point, water can become steam. And at what point does that happen? And that's really what I'm looking at in this case that I'm going to present to you today. So the level 4 dynamisms, this is to refresh your memory. You can see Melissa talked about these yesterday: self-education, autopsychotherapy, subject-object. She also talked about that. Chris talked about that. We've heard third factor, the inner psychic transformation. Several of you have referred to that, Eric, you did in your presentation, that self-awareness. So we've seen that come up a lot in the last 2 days, which have been, it's been so great. It's like eating candy, I love it. And then this education and self-perfection. And that perfection, what is that perfection? It's not the perfectionism that's crippling perfectionism. It's that sense of the personality ideal. I can imagine it, I know it, I sense it, I feel it, I want to move towards it. And it's this entelechy, this sense of pushing out, moving forward towards it, and really being driven towards it. Okay, so we're going to see that. Here's Dabrowski. Psychotherapy for preventative measures or changes in living conditions applied to oneself in order to control mental disequilibrium. And we all know what that feels like. Okay, what are the level 5 dynamisms? Responsibility. You heard of that a little bit echoed earlier. Pervasive authentism. So that consistency between behavior, between what I know, my values, we talked, that's already been discussed about where those values come from. Autonomy. Dominic, you talked a little bit about that independence from genetic and societal influences. So at level 5, we see it with the autonomy. And then what I just talked about, the personality ideal. So this comes from my slides that we did. I did this with Cheryl Ackerman. Hey, I would like to just take a second. I've got this necklace on today, and I wore it on purpose. It was a gift from Sharon Lynn. And I'd like to take a minute right now just to, as it's coming to me, and Cheryl Ackerman is on these slides, I would just like to take a minute for us to just give gratitude to all of those, Sharon's not on the planet anymore, but all of those who can't be with us because they're passed over or they can't be here. You know, we're so glad that you've joined us. And even if you're seeing this in 2 months or 2 years or whatever, it's wonderful that you're part of the family and that you're part of the group. And we just honor all of that. And it's neat to see where we've been and where we're going and this whole idea. And we did this, this was from our slide from Cheryl and I did in the Dabrowski 101. And it's this is, we talked about it before, the isness and the oughtness, lack of internal conflict. I want you to look for that to see if you see that in the case. No regression. So you're not going to see that backsliding back and forth. Okay, that steam is probably not going to go to water, maybe. Service to humanity and the altruism. So a couple of quotes, 2 or 3 quotes. Secondary integration. This is from Bill's work with the source on that from his Dabrowski 201. Integration of all mental functions in a harmonious structure controlled by higher emotions, such as the dynamisms of personality, ideal. I just told you this, autonomy and authenticity. The formation, I'll just read you the highlighted parts, integrated at a higher level. Key point number 3, secondary integration is not the end point of mental development. It continues throughout the personality ideal. It is the instinct for self-perfection. It's what impels. It's just that compelling sense. I have to do more. I can't be stagnant. I can't stop where I am. Okay, so DRI, which Nancy, and she's here, that she crafted this, and you can take a look at those descriptive sentences or statements there. And I told you, Frank and Nancy positioned my subject at between a 4 and a 4.5. Okay, yes, you did. I have it. And so what happened at the end of my presentation in 2012 was, from the back of the room, shouted Frank, "Why not level 5?" Why not level 5 has haunted Michele for the last 10 years. And so I'm going to share with you a little bit of what was, and then I'm going to share with you the new interviews, and you can let me know. So my subject was Jenny. I titled it From Disintegration to Peaceful Heart. She was in her early 30s. She followed the traditional script, became a teacher like everybody else in the family. She had this huge drive to be whole since she was a teeny little kid. And she was an entrepreneur. She created a healing modality, and she was a clinical director, and she also mentored a whole cadre of energy healers. So this was 10 years ago. These were some of the questions. You can read those. Critical decisions, what relationships? Have there been a special person who's changed your life? So these were some of our interviews. So she talked about from the get-go, I'm just gonna read you, I won't read you all of this, and I know it's kind of hard to read, but the highlighted things. She was at an incredible point of in total extinction. She got divorced, she walked away from being a teacher. She walked in one day and just said, "I can't do this anymore." They didn't believe her. They said, "We give you the weekend." She hadn't told her husband anything. So she had nothing. And she said all of the identities she had fell away at one time. She was left to uncover who I was beneath all of that. And that's what really marked, bar none, the most difficult time in my life. Now that's what she said. For 8 or 9 months, I couldn't be in public. I was so incredibly fragile. It was the only time in my entire life that I would go back and do again and again and again and again. And so you get that. I endured pain I had never dreamed possible. Everything was fragmented. There wasn't even a twig to hold on to. Nothing. Obliteration of self, total, complete obliteration. So I was in a million pieces, and that's when I was so desperate, I started developing a relationship with God, which had been a lip service before. Okay, I started to ask for help. It was surrendering of my small self. I was connected to truth and divinity, step by step, breath by breath, moment by moment, having the courage to implement some of the guidance I was receiving. The other side of disintegration. It's that realization aspect of who we really are and not who we think we are. So think about who this person is. And the reason that I'm so compelled to tell that story and go back and revisit it is because when I take a look at the literature, or I look at people who are moral exemplars or spiritual pathfinders, they're usually single. They don't usually have a family or involved like a lot of children, right? Or extended family, or they're not sandwich generation. Their obligations are often, I mean, you think about the Dalai Lama, Mother Teresa, I mean, they're to self really in that spiritual perfectionism. They're not typically in the middle of a family trying to do all of these other things. And I'm intrigued by that. Like, how do these people, this is just the old Marcia Sinitar, modern monks and mystics, people who live in today's world, how do they manage? Do they really exist? Okay, so I'm calling Jenny 2022 from peaceful heart to embodied heart and soul. She's now in her early 40s. She has an inner drive to remain whole, to create the beautiful daily despite tremendous adversity. You're going to hear about her adversity in a minute. She works with her spouse, Ben. This is not the first husband that she left in her early 30s. She's since found a life partner who is a beautiful, just what you were talking about, Nicole, just a beautiful mirror for her. And she has 2 children, Nathaniel and Violet. Nathaniel now is 9. He's primarily nonverbal. He requires 24/7 care. The extended family is with them always and creates a sacred space for him to be released from his suffering. That's what she calls the mission of her life right now. She continues her daily work. She's worked every single day since this child has been born as an energy healer and still is a mentor and director of her practice. So these are some of the questions that I ask any new learning or grow. I didn't know all of this story. In which ways are you changing? What emotions make you feel most alive? And what I really wanted to know was, did becoming a parent and weathering a pandemic shift the multi-level process in your inner world? Because you could imagine that that would cause a lot of backsliding if someone wasn't fully integrated, right? So what did I find? The first thing she said is, when Nathaniel was born, if you saw her face when she was telling the story, because we did it via Zoom, she was just suffused with just this huge emotion. You could just feel it was palpable. She said, a portal was opened. I was so terrified. I was split open in terror the moment this child was born. It has to do with making a big enough space, making my consciousness big enough to hold all of the greatness that he is. It's just incredible. She said, the bigness and the greatness of his soul is coming into embodiment. How do I stay connected to the inner knowing he's going to be okay? He suffers so much. When he suffers, we all suffer. So I hold the place just beyond the suffering to honor the present moment, to be here right now with all of his greatness, knowing that somehow on God's time, he'll be able to explain and advocate for himself. And she wanted to create that sacred space for him to be released from that. I've always known he'll be okay. Right now, he's not okay, but I have to be okay that that's okay. So he's filled with complexity. He has celiac disease. He has PANS, PANDA, if you know what that is, and I put some things there. Onset of OCD-like symptoms, irritability or aggression, depression and extreme moodiness, poor motor control, tics, all sensitivity, all kinds of sensitivity, visual hallucinations. Child doesn't sleep very often, highly sensitive in all ways. They spoon feed him 3 times a day. But he loves to be in nature. He loves to be with animals. His extended family takes him on these trips often. And she says, he's magical. The love he brings is as big as the fury that he brings. It's as big as the frustration that he brings. It's reflective of his grandness. There's tasks that we have to take him through each day. Every day is different. We want to bring him out of his suffering. So she says that 95, I'm talking mostly about Nathaniel. Like, I don't have time to really talk to you more about the extended family, the sibling, and all of the complicated relationships, but this is what complicates her life so much right now. Our lives are centered on the integration of who he is, a steady pathway of healing him. Capacity for everything, and all their family was blown open. All the illusions were shattered. I had to mourn every last piece of what I thought my life would be like. Imagine this grief. We had to learn to make beautiful what we have. Our adversity every day is enormous, but we have always perceived him in wholeness and hold him to his highest self. We are so blessed to have the family that we have. And the only contribution, so I want you to think about again with this level 5, is the peace that resides within me, because I have to be committed to my deep work, because I have to be as peaceful as I can, because that's what allows his nervous system, right? So that mirror neuron kind of stuff to relax. This is an incredible place of sensitivity. So Ben and I are blessed to be in a place of union. In our hardest moments, here's her partner holding her hand, saying, I'm so grateful he came to us. I just don't know who else could have managed this. It's conscious. And she said, she said, I thought I was a good person, but now I think I'm a really, really good person. So it's still that, right? I mean, what we're talking about. I need to work on myself and any of my beliefs that make me feel unsafe, because when you surrender into this unknowingness is the place to connect with the knowingness. Early, I told you this already, we learned our family didn't fit. So there was mourning about not fitting in as a family. That piece that we've talked about before about what society says is typical and how we fit into that. And yet we still know, Karen told us this, reminded us of some of this too, about those basic needs. We still have those belonging needs. Those are human needs. Intricacies are his beauty. It's an interesting one. In our family, we aren't about labeling. She expressed some real sadness about this. They thought they had a really deep connection with an agency, and the agency came, they had hired the agency came and fired them because they said that because they wouldn't use the labels of the outside world, they wouldn't call him autistic, that they were in denial as a family. And that, so you see this outside world saying, this is who you are, you're in denial, we can't help you anymore, goodbye. Okay, but she said this has given all of us in our family and extended family an opportunity to grow. I'm the same no matter what. Nothing on the outside can ever define us. Every day I know myself better. And when I can integrate the fullness of my everyday, I have so much gratitude that every day brings. When you start to learn is that you realize what you are capable of. So your own grandness, that personality ideal becomes more and more available to you. I asked her about, has this expanded her sense of connection with the divine? She said, are you kidding me? She said, every day our life is spent on our knees. We're in a state of prayer all day long. We have to be the channel to move the greatest power through us. I have become far more adept at now holding difficult spaces for my clients. She said, who is coming to her as her clients are some of the most difficult situations and people with some of the deepest trauma that she's ever heard about. But she can manage that now because of her expansiveness and her spaciousness. So trust at some level that this work is aligned to divine and perfect order. How can I serve? How can we serve? How can we bring more clarity and light? Ben and I want to bring more to others in similar situations around the world. This is the service. 20th year of practice. I haven't taken a day off in 7 years. We work from home. And she said this with joy. I mean, this wasn't anything that was said with any kind of, I haven't had a break, or I feel, oppressed or overwhelmed. Every day I meditate, every day I come into clarity, every day I center, every day I align, every day I put my whole self aside. I don't leave the house, but I really do. So it's amazing. Her consciousness is able to shift. It's not a healing session we try to fix anyone. We walk hand in hand. Do you remember us talking about that, about the mentoring and about not the relationship not being over? In energy work, we're awakening to who we are to be. I ask, how can I be of service to this client? The most important word right now is integrate. Remember that from those dynamisms? Integrate, we go in every single moment. We have to slow down. We increase our spaciousness. And there are feelings of total overwhelm. And then we find the resonance with the energy. Some of you talked about that already today. The myriad of energy and emotions can be present. When I feel that, I look at it with neutrality to see if I can figure out what is it needs to be seen, acknowledged, named, noticed. We can do that without judgment, not good or bad. Then there's just an isness to it. I mean, she's not even talking about Dabrowski's work, but she's using the same vocabulary. This is where she's calm. In my capacity in healing, it's just to sit with what other people are feeling and being okay with it and witnessing it. Here's what she suggests. I asked her for suggestions. How do we create the invitation to bring ourselves back to wholeness? She talked about softening energy through curiosity and sincerity, honesty. That's a theme coming up again, right? Be sincere and with humility. Our lives are overwhelming. We have to reassure ourselves. Okay, of course you're frightened. Sit down, make sense of what I feel. When we're rushed, we can notice. She says, you couldn't throw too much at me that I couldn't find my way through. I'm not invincible, but I've worked so much within the work of the heart that I feel very capable. The role of friendship. She has one dear, sweet friend. Her friend Angela literally shares a connection with each other every day. I record a message for her. She listens and responds in the morning. We've known each other for 25 years. We have hand in hand been able to consciously raise our children, and in doing so, raise ourselves. I'm able to share every single day my vulnerability with one other person. You can see how this makes her whole as well. The willingness to share allows for us to process every day without sugarcoating, no judgment, only love. She told me it is essential that every person finds one other person outside their family to be able to receive them in wholeness. She talks about her son again. His gift to all of us has been to dig deeply, love in an expanded way. Again, the opportunity for growth. I've had to surrender so much more. So my question to you is, why not level 5? What do you think? Say it again. Dominic, can you say it again? So said without hesitation that we can say that it is level 5. A lot of indication. Certain of the criteria. Nancy's saying that it meets certain of the criteria of level 5. Anybody else have a comment, or go ahead, Nicole?
Can I ask a weird question?
Of course.
If she's successful and capable and fulfilled in her journey, does it matter what level we assign to her? I mean, what does it matter if she's a 5? Do you see what I'm saying? I mean,
Sure.
Unless we're saying,
Sure.
I want to put it up as an ideal. Why does it matter to be a 5?
Well, I think what I was looking for is, are we seeing some of the kinds of things that we have as characteristics, you know, that we've talked about? Are we seeing that reflected? So, and so in that way, yeah, that was the reason for my question. Okay.
All of the models of level 5 that we have are single people.
Right.
That's why.
No, yeah.
Linda said that all of the models that we have so far of level 5 are single people. And so that's why.
There's a natural critic in me.
Uh-huh.
Right? And part of this is because I think I relate to some of this and I'm going, well, that's not where I'm at right now, but I've felt like I've been in places like this. So part of it may be, you know, an age wise, we're similar. Part of me wants to go, is she really there, or is she going to be there for 10 years, or is this temporary, you know?
Right.
I don't know if people are having those other feelings at all.
Absolutely. And those were some of my questions. And that's why I went back to revisit it, because I thought, well, okay, we got a pandemic and we have a complicated family situation. And
I'm wondering 10 years from now too. I'm just so curious, and obviously we can't look and know.
I don't know. I'll come back in 10 years and I'll give you I'll give you the next part of the story. Go ahead, Tracy. Oh, 5 more minutes. Okay. She's giving me I asked her to be my timer. Yes. The question is,
It's like a snake. Or snake like
Yes,
something
same,
like
yep.
more different, you know, like
Yeah.
person who has this idea, but has also his way of doing things, like
Yeah, level 5 people are still human beings.
they're still human beings, yes, and they will have imperfections, yeah. Anybody else? Yes, okay, Joy.
There's a question from the chat.
Okay.
Please repeat it.
Yeah.
Can you please define entelechy for us?
Can you please define entelechy for us? Entelechy is that sense of coming into the world knowing that you have a mission, that you have a purpose, a certain kind of, that you're here to do something special. And what it can be anything, but you're driven by that. It's just an inner drive.
oh,
Pardon? An essence. Frank's saying it's called your essence.
Do you feel like those that are in the upper levels need to find others that are in upper levels to continue to grow, or can they do it in isolation, or should they? Like, I'm thinking like
You know, that's a really interesting question. And I would recommend that you read a book called The Book of Joy, which is the story of the friendship of the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. And I think it's such a cool thing because it's like, I always thought about that. Well, who could the Dalai Lama have for a best friend, right? Right? I mean, like, okay, well, it's Desmond Tutu. So, I mean, or was, you know, until, so yeah, I mean, I do think that, and that might give you some insights. I like biographies in that way.
along the same line, I was curious about her one friend.
Her one friend?
Yeah, like I would love to have an interview
And interview her friend and find out and where is she in her journey as well. That's a possibility. Okay. Thank you for that suggestion. I think that's a great idea. Okay. I think we'll leave it there. Thank you so much. Yep.